my firm purpose in the tradition of
The Second World War was the most devastating war in the history of humanity. It plunged more than 80 countries and regions with a total population of about 2 billion into unprecedented calamity. In Asia's major theatre of war, China alone, the war casualties amounted to 35 million. After the war, the international community became fixed on the question of how to avoid another world war. How have Germany and Japan, which were responsible for starting the war, shouldered their responsibilities and learned lessons in the 70 years since peace was declared? In 2014, German Chancellor Angela Merkel delivered a keynote speech at China's prestigious Tsinghua University. Speaking about Germany's war crimes, she said that this part of German history was still fresh in the people's memory and nobody could escape this. She said reconciling past crimes was a miserable process, but was the right way to gain a correct understanding of historical issues, and it was important not to let this tragic history be repeated. In 1970, the Chancellor of West Germany, Willy Brandt, knelt down at the monument to victims of the Warsaw Ghetto uprising. This gesture showed the whole world the German people's determination and courage in assuming their historical responsibility. Since the end of the war, Germany has paid more than $10 billion in reparations to victim countries. It has achieved reconciliation with other European countries, including Poland, by contributing material to Poland's secondary school history textbooks, as well as through other genuine acts of redemption. In 2005, on the 60th anniversary of the end of the Second World War, a Holocaust Memorial was inaugurated in the center of Berlin. In a speech, the German Chancellor Gerhard Schröder said that remembrance of the war and the genocide perpetrated by the Nazi regime had become part of Germany's living constitution. Germany has achieved its self-redemption by 70 years of incessant efforts and has become one of the leading European powers. However, in Japan, the post-war decades have seen the political right-wing revise history textbooks and deny Japanese war crimes. Government leaders have visited the Yasukuni Shrine, which pays tribute to Class A war criminals, resulting in constant tension with Japan's Asian neighbors. In 2014, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's cabinet approved a proposal to reinterpret Japan's constitution to end the ban on allowing its military to exercise the right of self-defense. This caused further tension with neighboring countries. The international community is concerned that Japan might deviate from its peaceful development path.
要把失去的日本找回来，这是他现在提的口号。
安倍のやり方今見てますとね、私どもが子供の頃受けたような教育ね、最後は敗戦まで突っ走るわけだと。その昔のことをこう見てるような感じがしますね。
深く世界の体制と帝国の現状とに鑑み、非常の措置をもって遺族を収集せんとここに必要なる。
On August the 15th, 1945, the Japanese people held their breath in anticipation of a broadcast by their emperor. Few of them knew that Japan had lost the war.
我们一般人认为8月15号日本投降了，其实天皇的讲话里头没有谈到一点关于投降、战败的概念，没有任何一个这个概念。
In the imperial prescript on the termination of the war, Emperor Hirohito said the general trends of the world had all turned against Japan's interests. The Allies had employed the most cruel bomb, and in the best interests of his millions of subjects, the Emperor had to accept the provisions of the joint declaration of the United States, Great Britain, China, and the Soviet Union. Meanwhile, the Emperor emphasized that Japan had started the war to ensure Japan's self-preservation and stability in East Asia.
等于说，他对这个战争仍然没有任何一点的反省，觉得这个战争是我们是东亚领导东亚去解放的这个战争。
In the final stages of the war, desperate Japanese military personnel carried out suicide attacks to show their absolute loyalty to their emperor. The US hoped to use diplomatic means to persuade Japan to surrender unconditionally in order to minimize any further losses to its armed forces.
因此，这个美国和日本两军在太平洋上激烈厮杀的时候，实际上在这个瑞士的这个森林里面或者这个酒馆里面，美日两国的代表其实一直在谈判，谈到1945年5月，美国驻瑞士的这个总代表杜勒斯向日本海军派驻瑞士的谈判代表讲了一个条件嘛，就是日本还要接受无条件投降，但是美国一条谅解，就是可以保留天皇制。
On August the 30th, the Supreme Commander for the Allied Powers, Douglas MacArthur, arrived at Atsugi Airport in Japan's Kanagawa Prefecture. As the sole power occupying Japan, the US would leave an indelible mark on Japan's post-war development. MacArthur had witnessed Japanese military personnel committing suicide for the emperor and swore to rid Japan of militarism. Under MacArthur's supervision, Japan enacted the Peace Constitution, which stipulated that it would not maintain its own armed forces and would renounce the right to wage war. This photo may have had a tremendous psychological impact on Japan's Emperor Hirohito. An incarnation of God appears solemn and feeble, standing beside a towering MacArthur. This may have made the Japanese feel that they had been defeated by a more powerful adversary, straight and simple. MacArthur decided to use the emperor's authority to help the occupation run smoothly. Who should answer for Japan's war crimes? The eyes of the International Military Tribunal for the Far East eventually came to rest on Hideki Tojo, who had been the Prime Minister when Japan started the Pacific War.
当年的很多国家也提出来应当审判天皇，天皇是最主要的责任嘛。1945年前的天皇是一个国家大元帅的天皇，他是有权利的。所以东条英机在被抓起来的时候，一开始在他的言论里头还曾经讲说，我们都很尊重天皇嘛，天皇是我们的最高的元首嘛。
Tojo's words caught the attention of the president of the tribunal. Japanese politicians began to spread the word and portray the emperor as a puppet. With the Americans' help, a message reached Tojo.
所以下面就给他递过信息去，说不要这么讲了，你应该把所有责任揽到自己身上。所以东条英机呢，以后就改变了讲话了，就说啊，一切都是我来做主，我来承担。那么这种情况下，就造成一个思想上的很大的混乱，究竟谁是责任？谁有战争责任？
In 1948, the Soviet Iron Curtain was drawn across Europe and Asia. The Tokyo trials were almost finished. Planning to use Japan to contain the expansion of communism, the Americans brought the trials to an end.
西方不是这样子，在纽伦堡审判呢是审判了多次，审判的罪犯呢很多。东京审判25个人结束之后就停下来了。那么原来被作为甲级战犯的嫌疑人抓起来的，其实当年有100多人呢。那么以后陆陆续续全都释放了。
In 1950, the Korean War broke out. The US and Japan signed the Japan-US Security Treaty the following year. Thus, Japan became the US's security partner in Asia. Books about Hideki Tojo and other Class A war criminals were published and became bestsellers. War literature became very popular with Japanese readers. In 1953, the Shigeru Yoshida Cabinet's Minister of Education commented at the National Diet Legislature meeting, "I don't intend to comment on the rights and wrongs of the Greater East Asia War, but Japan engaged world powers for 4 years, which itself is enough to demonstrate the superiority of the Japanese people." Meanwhile, in Japan, a number of Class A war crime suspects and pre-war bureaucrats entered the political and public arena. Class A war crime suspect Nobusuke Kishi was the maternal grandfather of incumbent Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. During the war, he controlled much of the economy of the puppet state of Manchukuo, set up on Chinese territory. Later, he was appointed Minister of Munitions by Hideki Tojo. 2 days after Tojo and 6 other war criminals were sentenced to death by hanging, Kishi was released from custody. In 1955, he helped to form Japan's biggest conservative political party, the Liberal Democratic Party. 2 years later, he became Japan's Prime Minister. During his term, Kishi had two goals: revision of the Constitution and extension of the Japan-US Security Treaty. He was willing to put everything at stake, even his life, if it meant revamping the Japan-US Security Treaty. In June 1960, 6.5 million Japanese citizens took to the streets to protest. Even when the Prime Minister's office was surrounded by 300,000 protesters, Kishi calmly enjoyed a drink at his home. He said he would give his life to get the treaty revised. At that time, 3-year-old Shinzo Abe was living with his grandfather. Kishi fought hard to have the constitution revised and helped Japan shake off the stigma of having lost the war. In his memoir, Abe stated that his political DNA comes mostly from his grandfather.
日本は永久戦犯の岸さんが総理大臣になってるの。ドイツなんかでいまだにナチスの犯罪、それからユダヤ人虐殺の罪を追っかけているわけです、ずっとね。
After the war, the Germans were facing a similar situation to Japan. Their country was in ruins. Preoccupied with rebuilding their homes, they didn't pay much attention to their war responsibilities.
刚刚经历完2战那一辈人，他们认为这个审判会认为这是胜利者对失败者的审判，所以他们认为这个审判本身是不公平的。他们也认为，对于德国来讲，现在最大的任务是进行经济建设、完善主权。这历史问题有争议，或者说我们不去提它。
In the 1960s, there came a turning point. The war generation of children had grown up. Under Germany's post-war laws, any war crime suspect was held liable to prosecution under the law.
63年到65年之间进行了奥斯维辛的大审判，在这个过程等于就是说把大量的这种屠杀犹太人的丑行曝光一世了，这对于整个社会的冲击是特别大的。对于年轻人来讲，这是他们从来没有想象到的事情，居然自己的父辈做出了这么就是丑陋的这个行径，所以他们开始觉得羞耻，所以他们就很勇敢地站出来，要清算这些，反思这些曾经犯下的这些恶行。
Mostly all families, the family gathered and looked what happened. The children attacked their parents. The parents defended them. There was a lot of crying, weeping. How can you come to terms with the feeling of being guilty for the crimes of your parents?
On November the 7th, 1968, German reporter Beate Klarsfeld publicly slapped West German Chancellor Kurt Kiesinger, a former member of the Nazi Party. This showed how angry young people felt about the crimes committed by the older generation. In 1979, West Germany lifted the Statute of Limitations on Nazi murder, making it possible to pursue anyone guilty of Nazi war crimes. In 2008, the film The Reader was released. It was a co-production by Germany and the US. The young central character finds his former lover in the courtroom. He discovers that the woman had been a guard in a Nazi concentration camp during the Second World War. Her diligent work led to the death of many Jewish prisoners. The film asks if an ordinary German and diligent worker should be held responsible for the crimes that he or she indirectly commits. The answer is yes. Everyone should take responsibility for the consequences of his or her wartime actions. How does the Japanese public perceive their country's role in the Second World War?
日本其实某种意义上，他们很多人有说不出来的有一种冤屈的心理的。日本人回忆起这场战争的失败的时候，会渲染2颗原子弹；日本人会渲染东京大空袭，有各种各样的纪录片来表现这种东京大空袭。他会不断地表现这种的场面。
Most Japanese people think their country lost the war because of its blind expansion. Many Japanese people think they themselves were the biggest victims of the war. Prince Naruhiko Higashikuni, Japan's first post-war prime minister, called on the whole country to repent.
说大家都要思考 都要忏悔。我们为什么把仗打败了？你看他忏悔，他思考的一个战争责任，不是如何发动战争的责任，是把战争打败的责任。
The 1950s saw Japan rise from the rubble into a period of fast economic growth. In such circumstances, the country's morale was lifted, and the conservatives seized the chance to reverse history. Komatsu Kamikawa, who had greatly influenced Japan's wartime foreign policy, claimed that the emphasis on war responsibilities would foster a sense of inferiority within the Japanese nation, so it must change its evaluation of the war.
日本的话，它主要是因为它的官僚体系，它以前的政治体系其实并没有被摧毁的。美国人虽然说在日本，他按照他们的体系也重构日本的政治体系框架，但是它的政治生态是没有变化的。以前的那些人该干嘛还干嘛，他基本上，而且日本它这种军国主义思想，它不是说像德国纳粹时间那么短，它这种军国主义思想，它从明治维新之后就一直存在。
だから大東は共栄圏という考え方。だから当時のその非常に苦しめられていたそのアジアの人たちを自分たちは解放したと思ってるやつがいるからね。そういうことを本気で考えてるのはまだ日本にいるんですよ、いくらも。
The Vietnam War broke out in the 1960s and brought more changes to Japan's perception of its role in World War II. The brutal war scenes shown on television led some Japanese people to reconsider their nation's responsibility for inflicting harm during the earlier war.
这个时候他们就想到另外一个问题：当年日本军队在中国，不也是这么一种状态吗？所以他们在想，我们现在在反省战争的时候，光讲说战争给我们带来很多灾难，还不够。我们还没有意识到我们自己的这个叫做加害。
However, these Japanese intellectuals had little influence on the administration. Japan's biggest conservative political party, the Liberal Democratic Party, had dominated the country's political scene for 50 years since the end of the war. When it was formed, it was led by pre-war bureaucrats. It had never guided the public to examine and reflect on the country's war years. The Cold War set up barriers to international communication, making it extremely hard to settle outstanding war issues between nations. In 1972, the ice of the Cold War started to thaw. US President Richard Nixon visited China. The same year, Kukie Tanaka took office as Japanese Prime Minister. In spite of opposition from within his party, Tanaka and his Foreign Minister, Masayoshi Ohira, visited Beijing to try to establish diplomatic relations with China.
田中角荣本身也是自民党的呀，对吧？政治态度他是右的，没有问题。那么，但是他呢就觉得，哪怕冒着生命危险，也需要和中国改善关系。
In his first speech delivered in China, Tanaka merely used the word trouble to describe the consequences of the war.
在那以前他讲的话，每到一个关键的地方都热烈鼓掌，就到那个地方，哇，一下子肃静了。
In fact, China and Japan had been engaged in trade through unofficial channels for 20 years since the 1950s. A friendship had built up between the people of the two countries. Now, in 1972, Chinese and Japanese politicians had to face up to sensitive historical issues. After several rounds of negotiations, they reached an agreement. The Sino-Japan joint communique stated that the Japanese side was keenly conscious of its responsibility for the serious damage that Japan inflicted on the Chinese people through war and deeply reproached itself. In the 1990s, as the Cold War ended, Asian victims of Japan's wartime occupation started to request reparations from Japan. In 1995, on the occasion of the 50th anniversary of the end of the Second World War, Japanese Prime Minister Tomichi Murayama of the Social Democratic Party delivered an unprecedented speech expressing his remorse and sorrow.
支配と侵略によって多くの国々、とりわけアジア諸国の人々に対して多大の損害と苦痛を与えました。この歴史の事実を謙虚に受け止め、ここに改めて痛切な反省の意を表し、心からのお詫びの気持ちを表明いたします。
所以当年他讲话的时候，还有我们国内也有很多人批评， 啊，你怎么那个态度好像意思是态度不是那么明朗，或者什么不是那么这个深刻。但是要知道，他是在那种日本那种社会下，所以他毕竟是顶了很大的压力，必定是反映了相当多的那种进步力量的声音。
In April 2013, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said his administration did not strictly agree with the Murayama statement. It was only in 2014 that he changed his mind. As for the then Chief Cabinet Secretary Yohei Kono's 1993 statement on Asian women forced into sexual slavery by Japan, Abe complained that this issue had caused trouble for successive leaders and claimed that he would withdraw the statement and initiate his own investigations on the issue of the so-called comfort women. 2 months later, under huge international pressure, he was forced to take back his word.
说中日邦交正常化以后，我们在正式的文件、正式的场合里边，对中国有过22次的道歉。但是日本的道歉非常有特点，每一次道歉以后几乎不出1个月，总要有另外一方面的我们所说的右翼的政治家要站出来，来对这个事情进行否认。
In an interview with the Japanese Prime Minister, America's Foreign Affairs magazine commented that there seemed to be 2 different Shinzo Abes. The nationalist and conservative Abe, who supports history textbook revisionism, questions the comfort women issue, and also the legitimacy of the International Military Tribunal for the Far East, and the pragmatic Abe, who seeks cooperation with China and South Korea. So which is the real Abe? How can we interpret the alternation between the 2 Abes? Vacillation reflects a lack of sincerity on the part of some Japanese political organizations and politicians who accept history as it is. This will cause Japanese society to lean to the right and keep major historical facts away from the Japanese people.